I am Eleanor Brooks, and I am 70 years old. The day I finally opened my late husband's safety deposit box, I expected nothing more than old papers, insurance documents, and the careful records he always kept. Instead, the bank manager leaned closer and whispered, "Someone tried to get into it before you." When he slowly turned the security monitor toward me, everything I believed about my family began to unravel. Before we continue, please like, comment, and subscribe to Easy as Folktales if you enjoy emotional family stories like this. It really helps the channel grow, and don't forget to tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Now, let me tell you how one ordinary morning became the beginning of the greatest betrayal I had ever faced. The bank manager stood silently for a long moment. His face had lost its color, and his hands trembled slightly as he turned the black monitor toward me. My breath caught in my throat so suddenly that it felt as though my chest had locked shut. There on the screen stood my daughter-in-law, Olivia, wearing oversized sunglasses and a cream-colored coat, smiling politely at the reception desk as though she belonged there. But it wasn't Olivia who made my knees weak. Standing beside her was my own son, Ethan, holding a thick folder beneath his arm. My husband had been buried only 3 weeks earlier. Why were they trying to open his safety deposit box before I even knew what it contained? And what were they so desperate to find before I got there? Until that moment, I believed I had come to collect ordinary documents. Perhaps a copy of a will, insurance records, or one of my husband's neatly written letters. My husband, Samuel, believed every important thing deserved a record. Every receipt, every family photograph, every birthday card I ever gave him was carefully stored and labeled. If Samuel placed something inside that box, I trusted it had value. I never imagined it could hold danger. The bank manager, Mr. Whitmore, cleared his throat. "Mrs. Brooks," he said quietly, "I did not allow them access. Your husband left strict instructions. No one was permitted to open the box unless you were personally present with identification after his death certificate had been officially recorded." He hesitated before continuing. "But your son and daughter-in-law became quite upset when we refused." I stared at him. "They told us you were ill, confused, and no longer capable of managing your affairs." Confused. The word hurt more than I expected. I kept staring at the frozen image on the screen. Olivia rested one hand lightly on Ethan's arm, just as she always did whenever she wanted to appear gentle while quietly controlling every conversation around her. She always called me Mom with perfect manners and an equally perfect smile. Looking back, that smile always seemed rehearsed. Ethan looked exhausted in the recording. He was 43 years old, yet somehow he appeared smaller than I remembered, like a frightened boy pretending to be a grown man. "I already know who they are," I whispered. Mr. Whitmore lowered his eyes. "Yes, ma'am. It was your son and your daughter-in-law." For several seconds I couldn't answer. I simply gripped the edge of his desk so tightly that my gloves creased beneath my fingers. Around us, the bank continued its ordinary business. Printer buzzed nearby. Someone laughed softly across the lobby. A pen rolled across a counter before dropping onto the polished floor. It felt impossible that the world could continue moving while mine had just stopped. "I would still like to open the box," I finally said. Mr. Whitmore nodded immediately. "Of course. But before we go downstairs, there's something else you should know." I looked at him. They didn't come only once. They came twice. My heart tightened. "Twice?" "Yes." He swallowed. "The second visit. Your daughter-in-law presented paperwork claiming she had temporary authority over family assets." He paused again. "Our legal department rejected the documents. They appeared incomplete." He looked uncomfortable before adding quietly, "And possibly altered." Samuel's voice echoed inside my memory. "Slow down, Ellie. Look carefully. The truth always leaves fingerprints." He had repeated those words throughout our 47 years together. Sometimes after a neighbor told an unbelievable story. Sometimes after a tool disappeared from the workshop. Sometimes after Ethan told one of his childish excuses growing up. Back then the lies involved broken windows or muddy shoes. Now they involved legal documents and the property of a dead man. I nodded once. "Take me to the box." We walked through the quiet hallway toward the vault. Every step echoed across the polished floor. As we walked, I felt as though I were traveling through two different places at once. The cold hallway stretched before me. Behind me stretched an entire lifetime. Samuel and I had never claimed to have the perfect marriage. No marriage truly is. But together we survived layoffs, miscarriages, hospital visits, broken-down cars, and nights spent sitting at the kitchen table trying to figure out how to pay bills before morning. Samuel spent most of his life repairing engines before eventually opening his own small mechanics shop on the edge of Ashford. The business wasn't glamorous. It simply kept food on our table. It bought Ethan's school uniforms, paid for baseball registration. It helped cover his university tuition. When Ethan was little, he adored his father. He would sit upside down on an old paint bucket inside the workshop, asking endless questions while Samuel repaired engines. "What does this wrench do? Why is that part shiny? Can engines hear us?" Samuel answered every question with patience. "A child who never stops asking questions," he'd often say, "rarely grows into a fool." Somewhere along the years, though, something changed. Or perhaps Ethan changed slowly enough that I never wanted to admit it. Like so many mothers, I kept excusing behavior that should have worried me. Love can be blind when it wears a mother's face. Mr. Whitmore unlocked the vault and stepped aside. Rows of identical metal doors lined the walls. Cold, silent, secretive. He stopped before one in the middle row. He inserted the bank's master key before handing me my own. The same small key Samuel insisted I keep hidden inside my jewelry box all those years ago. "For someday," he'd always said. I hated that word. Today it finally arrived. My fingers trembled as I slid the key into the lock. It took 2 tries before it finally turned with a soft click. Mr. Whitmore carefully removed the long metal box and carried it into a private viewing room before quietly placing it on the table. Then he stepped back. The silence inside that small room felt almost sacred. I lifted the lid. Inside were several neatly arranged items. There was a thick brown envelope with my name written across the front in Samuel's unmistakable handwriting. A small velvet pouch rested beside it. A flash drive lay underneath several neatly stacked folders. And beneath everything else sat another envelope with bold red writing across the front. "If Ethan or Olivia attempt to open this without Eleanor present, something is terribly wrong." I stared at those words until my eyes blurred. Mr. Whitmore glanced toward the envelope and quietly asked, "Would you like a few moments alone?" "No," I whispered. "Please stay." For the first time since Samuel's funeral, I didn't want to be by myself. I opened the envelope addressed to me. Inside was a handwritten letter. "My dearest Ellie, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and I'm sorry for leaving you alone. You always teased me for preparing for the worst, but sometimes a man feels a storm before the clouds arrive. For the past year I've noticed things that have troubled me deeply. I hoped I was wrong. Prayed I was wrong. But if Ethan and Olivia rushed to this box before you, then my fears were justified." A chill spread through my entire body. Kept reading. "There are things about Ethan's financial troubles and Olivia's influence over him that you do not know. I kept much of it from you because your heart is kind, and because I hoped our son would come back to himself. Hope, however, is not the same as truth. Inside this box you'll find evidence of money taken, signatures copied, and plans discussed behind our backs. If I'm correct, they intended to force you from our home and sell the repair shop before you understood what was happening." The room seemed to tilt beneath me. Mr. Whitmore quietly shifted his weight but wisely remained silent. The letter continued. "I also believe Ethan does not fully understand everything Olivia has done in his name. He is guilty of weakness, secrecy, and poor judgment. But I fear she has pushed him farther than he realizes. Listen carefully before acting, but act. Do not allow silence to bury you beside me. A tear landed on the page. Samuel knew. He had carried this burden alone. With trembling hands, I reached for the second envelope. Inside were copies of property records, financial statements, printed emails, and legal documents. Several pages referred to our family home in Brookhaven. Others mentioned our repair shop on Maple Ridge Road. Then I froze. There, printed plainly across one email, were words that stole the breath from my lungs. Once Samuel is gone, Eleanor will be too confused to fight us. I didn't need to check the sender. Those words sounded exactly like Olivia. Cold, polite, precise. For one strange moment I almost laughed. Not because anything was funny. Sometimes pain simply twists itself into something unrecognizable. Confused. She thought grief would make me helpless. That was her first mistake. Trying to reach this box before I did was her second. I wiped my face. The velvet pouch contained Samuel's gold wedding band. The one he stopped wearing after arthritis made his fingers swell. Beneath it rested a handwritten note. The flash drive is the key. If anything happens to me unexpectedly, trust neither quick tears nor rushed paperwork. Go directly to Victoria Monroe. Victoria Monroe, our longtime family attorney. Samuel hadn't worked with her in years. But he trusted her completely. Mr. Whitmore looked genuinely concerned. Would you like me to call someone? Yes. My voice sounded stronger than I expected. Please call me a taxi. Not my son. Not anyone from my family. Just a taxi. He nodded immediately. After he stepped outside, I remained seated beside Samuel's letter while betrayal covered the table before me like broken glass. Part of me wanted to drive directly to Ethan's house. Another part wanted to crawl beneath my blankets and pretend none of this existed. Instead, I straightened my shoulders. People had already begun treating me as though I were powerless. They were about to discover how wrong they were. The taxi ride home passed in silence. Every familiar street carried another memory. The cafe where Samuel always ordered peach pie. The pharmacy where we bought cough medicine every winter. The gas station where Ethan worked during high school. Everything looked the same. Nothing felt the same. When I arrived home, I stood on the porch before unlocking the door. This house had been built with Samuel's hands. No one was taking it. Inside, the silence felt heavier than before. I brewed tea, although I barely drank any of it. Instead, I spread only 3 documents across my kitchen table. One showed a draft property transfer. Another contained a forged version of my signature. The third contained Olivia's cruel email. I stared at them until evening settled across the windows. Just as I reached for the phone to call Victoria Monroe, I heard a key sliding into my front door. Froze. Ethan had never learned to knock. Samuel hated that habit. Use the doorbell, he'd always say. A decent man never walks into another person's home as though he's sneaking inside. The lock turned. Olivia entered first. Eleanor, she said brightly. We thought you might be lonely. Ethan followed carrying a bouquet of white roses. The first thing Olivia noticed wasn't me. It was the stack of documents resting on my kitchen table. Her smile disappeared instantly. In that single moment, I understood something with complete certainty. The real battle had only just begun. For several seconds no one moved. Ethan looked exhausted. The resemblance to his father remained around his eyes. But Samuel's eyes had always been steady. Ethan searched constantly for somewhere safe to land. Olivia recovered first. She always did. You've been busy, she said lightly. I have. Ethan cleared his throat. Mom. We brought flowers. I can see that. Samuel never liked white roses. He always said they reminded him of hospital corridors. Olivia stepped farther into the kitchen. We've been worried. You haven't answered many calls. And after everything. She smiled gently. Perhaps you shouldn't spend tonight alone. There it was again. Hidden beneath concern. You need help. You can't manage. I looked directly at her. I spent part of today at the bank. For the first time her expression tightened. Ethan looked visibly nervous. "The bank?" he asked. "Yes. The safety deposit box." The room fell silent. Olivia forced a quick laugh. "Oh, Eleanor. I'm sure Samuel only left old paperwork." "Did he?" I picked up one document. Not the worst one. Just enough to watch their faces. Because I found something much more interesting than paperwork. Ethan stepped forward. "Mom. Maybe we should sit down." "No." That single word stopped him. For years I had softened every consequence. Every mistake. Every excuse. Samuel warned me often. "Stop patting every wall around him, Ellie. One day he'll run into the truth and blame everyone else for the bruise." At the time I thought Samuel was too strict. Standing there I realized he had been right all along. Olivia set her purse carefully on the kitchen counter. "Eleanor," she said in a gentle voice. "You look upset. Maybe you've misunderstood something." I almost smiled. She had no idea what I had actually discovered. Yet she was already preparing to explain away my own understanding. "I understand enough," I replied. Ethan looked trapped, like a boy caught doing something wrong with no idea whether to confess or invent another excuse. "Mom. Whatever you found I can explain." "Oh, good," I answered quietly. Because I'd very much like an explanation. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. Olivia stepped in before he could speak. "What Ethan means is that there was already paperwork being prepared before Samuel passed away. We were only trying to help. He was under tremendous stress, and you were already grieving. We thought it would be wise to organize a few things." I held her gaze. "By trying to enter the safety deposit box before I did?" The color drained slightly from Ethan's face. Olivia's perfect posture stiffened. "Oh. They hadn't expected the bank to tell me." "You viewed the security footage?" she asked. "No. The bank manager volunteered the information after I asked who had tried to enter the vault." Ethan turned sharply toward her. "You said they wouldn't tell her." She shot him a warning look before recovering with another polished smile. "Everything is getting twisted," she said. I stood slowly. It had made my knees ache. It had not weakened my backbone. "Then let's untwist it." I looked directly at Ethan. "Tell me why you went to the bank." Then I looked at Olivia. "Tell me why legal papers with my forged signature exist. And tell me why you wrote that once Samuel was gone, I would be too confused to fight you." Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Finally Olivia spoke. "So, you read my email. It was inside my husband's safety deposit box." Ethan dropped the bouquet. The flowers scattered across the kitchen floor. He looked at Olivia with an expression I'd never seen before. "You told me Dad was imagining things." She whispered sharply. "Ethan. Not now." "No," I interrupted. "Now is exactly the right time." My heart pounded against my ribs. Fear had slowly transformed into something stronger. Resolve. Ethan covered his face. "Mom. I didn't know everything." There it was. Not innocence. Not honesty. Just the first crack. "How much did you know?" He stared at the floor. "We were in financial trouble." Olivia answered immediately. "Lots of people struggle financially." I ignored her. "How much trouble?" Ethan swallowed. "More than I admitted." "To me." He nodded. "To Dad." Another nod. "When did it begin?" "Almost 2 years ago." He spoke quietly. "My consulting business lost several major contracts. We burned through our savings. Then credit cards. Then another mortgage." Olivia folded her arms. "We were trying to protect our family." "Protect the family." "Yes." She spoke without shame. "Meanwhile your son was drowning while valuable property sat untouched." Samuel had helped Ethan countless times. Business loans. School expenses. Emergency bills. Every time we believed it would be the last. Helping had quietly become enabling. I looked at Ethan. "Did you intend to take my house?" "No." The answer came too quickly. His eyes drifted toward Olivia. That movement told me more than his words. Olivia answered instead. No one intended to take your home. We were restructuring assets. With forged signatures. They were preliminary drafts. By telling strangers I was mentally confused. We were trying to avoid delays. I stared at her. My husband had barely been buried. I shrugged. Life doesn't stop because people become emotional. The room seemed colder. Some people become cruel only when angry. Olivia spoke cruelty as though discussing tomorrow's weather. Only. Without guilt. She finally abandoned all pretense. Let's stop pretending Samuel trusted us. He kept secrets. He treated you as though the two of you were the only people who mattered. Yes. We went to the bank because we believed he had hidden something. Something capable of saving us. Or destroying us. That sentence caught my attention. Destroying you. She realized she had revealed too much. Ethan looked at her. What do you mean? Nothing. It didn't sound like nothing. She sighed impatiently. Your father tracked financial transfers. The workshop. The accounts. The loans. Ethan stared. You told me those loans were legal. They were supposed to be temporary. I looked from one to the other. What loans? Neither answered immediately. I repeated the question. What loans? Ethan finally whispered. We used Dad's repair shop as collateral. Everything inside me turned cold. Samuel's workshop. His life's work. You had no right. It was only supposed to be temporary, Olivia insisted. When did Samuel discover it? About 4 months ago, Ethan admitted. So Samuel had carried this secret alone for months. Gathering evidence. Planning quietly. Protecting me. Perhaps protecting Ethan too. Olivia reached toward the documents. I moved first. They belong to me. They concern family business. Exactly. They concern my family. Ethan rubbed his forehead. Dad said he was changing his estate plan. That stopped me. Changing it how? Olivia answered before he could. He said you would control everything. The house. The workshop. The investments. He said Ethan wouldn't inherit directly until he proved he could live responsibly. That sounded exactly like Samuel. Firm. Painful. Necessary. Ethan whispered. He called me weak. I looked at him. Were you? After a long silence he answered. Yes. One simple word. Late. But honest. For the first time that evening, I saw genuine shame instead of excuses. Outside, headlights swept across my front window. A vehicle stopped. Then another. Someone slammed a car door. A heavy knock echoed through the house. Then another. Harder. Ethan Brooks. A man's voice thundered through the door. We know you're inside. Every muscle in Ethan's body tightened. Olivia's face lost every trace of color. I looked from one to the other. What have you brought to my home? Neither answered. The knocking came again. Louder. This time I understood. The betrayal hidden inside Samuel's safety deposit box had finally arrived at my front door. And whatever happened next, there would be no returning to the family we once believed we had.